They say logistics is about controlling chaos. My marriage was a black hole. Not even light escaped. I'm Leon Briggs, 47 years old, and I manage supply chains for a mid-sized manufacturing company in Toledo, Ohio. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills and keeps my brain busy tracking shipments, managing timelines, and solving problems that would make most people reach for a bottle of whiskey before lunch. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My wife Marla had been acting strange for months. Late nights at the office, mysterious text messages, and a sudden interest in her appearance that hadn't existed since our wedding day 8 years ago. She'd started wearing perfume to work, expensive stuff that I certainly hadn't bought her. "Working late again tonight, honey," she'd say, barely looking up from her phone as she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Derek's got us on this big project." Derek Foster, her boss at the insurance company downtown, a smug bastard in his early 50s who drove a BMW and wore suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I'd met him exactly twice at company Christmas parties, and both times he'd looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of his Italian leather shoes. The thing about being in logistics is that you develop a keen eye for patterns. When shipments start arriving late, when invoices don't match purchase orders, when the numbers just don't add up, you notice. And Marla's behavior had become a series of inconsistencies that my brain couldn't ignore. She'd come home smelling like expensive wine and claiming she'd eaten a sandwich at her desk. Her phone would buzz with texts at midnight, and she'd grab it like her life depended on it. She'd started doing laundry more often, particularly her work clothes, washing away evidence of wherever she'd actually been spending her evenings. My daughter Casey, 16 and sharp as a tack, had started giving her mother strange looks across the dinner table. Casey was from my marriage to Marla, a quiet, bookish kid who inherited my analytical mind and her mother's stubborn streak. She'd always been close to Marla, but lately she'd been spending more time in her room, headphones on, avoiding family conversation. Then there was Aaron, my 20-year-old son from my first marriage. He was a junior at the University of Toledo, studying engineering and living in the dorms. Aaron had always been a bit of a troublemaker. Nothing serious, just the usual college stupidity. Parties, bad grades, questionable girlfriends. But he was smart, and I'd been proud to help him through school, even if it meant stretching our budget thin. Aaron had been coming around the house more often lately, usually when I was at work. Marla would mention it casually, almost too casually. "Aaron stopped by today," she'd say, stirring pasta sauce and not meeting my eyes. "He needed to pick up some old textbooks from the garage." "On a Tuesday afternoon? Doesn't he have classes?" "Oh, you know how college schedules are. Very flexible." I did know college schedules. I'd been paying for one for 3 years. My only real friend these days was Phil Martinez, a guy I'd known since high school who worked at the Ford plant across town. Phil was ex-military, built like a brick shithouse, and had the kind of loyalty that was getting harder to find these days. We'd meet for beers every Friday at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar that served cold beer and minded its own business. "Your wife's working a lot of overtime lately," Phil had observed one Friday evening, nursing his third Budweiser. "Must be nice, all that extra money coming in." "Yeah, funny thing about that," I'd replied, staring into my beer. "Haven't seen any extra money on the pay stubs?" Phil had given me a look that said everything and nothing. He'd been through a messy divorce 5 years earlier, and he had the battle scars to prove it. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in October. I'd gotten home early from work. A shipment had been delayed, and there wasn't much point in sitting around the office waiting for trucks that weren't coming. Marla's car was in the driveway, but the house was quiet. I found her in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with her phone pressed to her ear, giggling like a teenager. She had her back to me, twirling a strand of hair around her finger in a gesture I hadn't seen in years. "Oh, Dee, you're terrible," she was saying, her voice soft and intimate. I can't believe you said that to Mrs. Patterson. She must have turned 3 shades of red. I cleared my throat, and Marla spun around like she'd been shot. Her face went pale, then flushed bright red. I have to go, she said quickly into the phone. Leon just got home. She hung up and smiled at me, but it was the kind of smile you'd give a stranger at a bus stop, polite and meaningless. Who was that? I asked, setting my briefcase down on the kitchen table. Oh, just Derek. We were discussing the Patterson account. You know how demanding she can be. I knew Derek Foster's first name was Derek, not D, but people had nicknames, right? Maybe his middle name started with D. Maybe I was being paranoid. But paranoia in logistics can save your ass. When something feels wrong, it usually is wrong. That night, after Marla had gone to bed, I sat in my home office and did what I do best. I analyzed the data. Credit card statements, bank records, phone bills, anything I could get my hands on legally. What I found made me freeze. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, charges at lingerie stores I'd never heard of, hotel bar receipts from the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where Derek Foster probably took clients for business dinners. But the phone records were the real smoking gun. Hundreds of text messages between Marla and a number I didn't recognize. Calls that lasted for hours, usually during her supposed overtime shifts. I cross-referenced the number with online directories. It came back to Derek Foster. My wife was having an affair with her boss. It was such a cliché that I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I did what any self-respecting logistics manager would do. I started planning. The first step was surveillance. I needed concrete evidence, something that would hold up in divorce court. I ordered a small wireless camera online, the kind security companies use for covert operations. Nothing illegal, nothing that would get me in trouble, just a little insurance policy. Installing it in Marla's office would be tricky, but not impossible. The cleaning crew worked evenings, and I knew from Marla's complaints that security in her building was a joke. A little reconnaissance, a little patience, and I'd have all the evidence I needed. What I didn't expect was what I actually found. The camera was smaller than a matchbox and transmitted video directly to my laptop. I'd installed it on a Friday evening, hiding it behind a fake plant on the bookshelf in Marla's office. The security guard had been asleep at his desk, and the cleaning crew had been too busy gossiping in Spanish to notice me slipping through the back entrance. For 3 days, I watched nothing but routine office work. Marla typing reports, answering phones, eating sad desk salads while scrolling through Facebook. I was starting to think I'd been wrong, that maybe my wife was just going through some kind of midlife crisis that involved expensive underwear and late-night phone calls with her boss. Then, on Monday evening, everything changed. It was almost 8 o'clock when I saw movement on the laptop screen. The office should have been empty. Marla had texted me hours earlier saying she was working late on the Patterson account and would grab dinner on the way home. Someone was entering her office, but it wasn't Marla. It was Aaron. My son walked into frame wearing jeans and a University of Toledo hoodie, looking around nervously like he was afraid of being caught. He sat down in Marla's chair and started typing on her computer, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the monitor. What the hell was Aaron doing in my wife's office after hours? I watched for 20 minutes as my son worked at Marla's computer, occasionally glancing toward the door. Then Marla appeared, carrying 2 coffee cups from the Starbucks downstairs. She handed one to Aaron, and he smiled at her in a way that made my stomach clench. It wasn't the smile you give your stepmother. It was intimate, grateful, almost loving. Marla sat on the edge of her desk, close enough to Aaron that their knees were almost touching. They talked quietly, too quietly for the camera's microphone to pick up, but I could read body language well enough. The way Marla leaned toward him, the way Aaron's eyes never left her face, the way her hand briefly touched his shoulder when she laughed at something he said. Then Aaron stood up, and Marla moved closer. For a moment, I thought they were going to kiss, and I felt my world tilt on its axis. Instead, Aaron pulled her into a hug that lasted far too long, his face buried in her hair, her arms wrapped tightly around his waist. When they separated, Marla's hand lingered on Aaron's chest, and he covered it with his own. They stood like that for several seconds, looking into each other's eyes, before Aaron finally stepped back and gathered his things. He left first, and Marla sat alone in her office for another 10 minutes, staring at her computer screen with a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, trying to process what I'd just seen. My wife wasn't having an affair with her boss. She was having an affair with my son. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day hacking into Marla's phone backup. It wasn't difficult. She'd used the same password for everything since I'd known her, our anniversary date followed by her birth year. What I found in her text messages made me want to put my fist through the wall. "Can't wait to see you tonight," Aaron had texted her the previous Friday. "I've been thinking about our conversation all week." "You're so sweet," Marla had replied. "I feel like you're the only one who really understands me. Don't tell your dad we've been talking so much. He wouldn't understand." "Our secret," Aaron had responded, followed by a heart emoji. There were dozens of messages like that, going back months. Emotional, intimate conversations about their feelings, their dreams, their frustrations with me. Aaron complaining about how I was always on his case about grades and money. Marla sympathizing, telling him he was mature for his age, that she wished I could see him the way she did. It was emotional manipulation, disguised as maternal concern, and Aaron was eating it up like candy. The worst part was reading Aaron's messages about me. How I was controlling and didn't understand him. How Marla was more like a real mother than his biological mother had ever been. How he felt closer to Marla than anyone else in his life. My wife had weaponized my son's daddy issues against me, and I'd been too blind to see it happening. I screenshotted everything and saved it to a secure folder on my laptop. Then I called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who'd handled my first divorce and had no patience for bullshit. "Leon," she said when I walked into her office that afternoon, "you look like hell." "I feel like hell," I replied, sliding a USB drive across her desk. "I need you to look at this and tell me what my options are." Patricia plugged in the drive and spent 20 minutes reviewing the photos and messages while I sat in silence, watching her face grow increasingly grim. "Well," she said finally, "this is messed up, but it's not illegal. There's no evidence of contact, and Aaron is over 18. Morally reprehensible? Absolutely. Grounds for divorce? Definitely. Criminal? Probably not. What about the financial stuff? She's been spending money on dinners and hotels." "With Aaron?" I nodded. "That's marital funds being used for an emotional affair. We can use it in the divorce proceedings, but it's not going to land her in jail." "So what do I do?" Patricia leaned back in her chair and studied me with the calculating look of a woman who'd seen every possible variation of human stupidity. "You could confront them, file for divorce, and try to move on with your life," she said. Or you could get creative, make them understand that actions have consequences. But Leon, if you go that route, you need to be very careful, very legal, and very thorough. I knew exactly what she meant. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, waiting for Marla to come home from her late night at the office. When she walked through the door at 10:30, I was ready. "How was work?" I asked, not looking up from my screen. "Oh, busy. Derek had us working on the Patterson account until almost 9. "Funny thing about that," I said, finally meeting her eyes. "I called Derek's office around 8:30. His secretary said he left at 5 for a dinner meeting with clients." Marla's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "He came back. We had a conference call with the client." "Which client?" "Patterson Industries." "Patterson Industries doesn't exist, Marla." I looked it up. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Marla set down her purse and crossed her arms, shifting into defensive mode. Are you checking up on me now, going through my work files? No, I said calmly. I'm checking up on my son. The color drained from her face completely. I don't know what you think you saw. I saw Aaron in your office last night. I saw the text messages. I saw the credit card statements for all those cozy dinners at the Marriott. Marla sank into the chair across from me, her hands shaking. Leon, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. He's confused. He's been having problems at school, problems with girls, and he needed someone to talk to. I was just being supportive. By telling him you understand him better than his father does? By meeting him for romantic dinners and intimate conversations? By letting him hug you like you're his girlfriend instead of his stepmother? Nothing physical happened. Yet. The word hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. Marla started crying, but they were the wrong kind of tears. Not tears of remorse or shame, but tears of frustration at being caught. You're twisting everything, she said. Aaron is like a son to me. I care about him. Aaron is my son, and you've been poisoning him against me for months, turning him into your emotional boyfriend while I've been working my ass off to pay his tuition and keep this family together. That's not— It stops now, I said, closing the laptop with a sharp snap. All of it. The dinners, the text messages, the secret meetings. It stops, or I file for divorce and take you for everything you're worth. Marla wiped her eyes and looked at me with something that might have been hatred. You can't control who I care about, Leon. Watch me. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Aaron's university, withdrawing my financial support and removing myself as an emergency contact. The second was to our bank, freezing all joint accounts and credit cards. The third was to Marla's HR department, requesting an anonymous meeting about inappropriate workplace conduct. When Marla tried to buy coffee on her way to work, her card was declined. When she tried to access our savings account online, she found herself locked out. When she got to the office, there was a message waiting for her to report to HR immediately. I spent the day at work, managing shipments and solving problems, feeling more focused and clear-headed than I had in months. Around 3 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Aaron. Dad, what the hell? The bursar's office says my tuition payment was canceled, and my car insurance got canceled too. What's going on? I replied with a screenshot of one of his text messages to Marla, the one where he called me controlling and said Marla understood him better than I ever could. Ask your girlfriend to explain it, I texted back. Then I blocked his number. Marla came home that evening looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her eyes were red from crying, her makeup was smeared, and her hands were shaking as she fumbled with her keys at the front door. I was waiting for her in the living room, sitting in my favorite chair with a beer in my hand and a folder full of documents on the coffee table. We need to talk, she said, her voice hoarse. I'm listening. She sat on the edge of the couch, as far from me as possible, and clasped her hands in her lap like a child who'd been called to the principal's office. HR wants me to take a leave of absence, she said. Someone called in an anonymous tip about inappropriate conduct with a family member. They have security footage of Aaron coming to my office after hours. Imagine that. Leon, please, you have to understand. Aaron was struggling. His grades were slipping. He was having problems with his girlfriend, and he felt like you were always disappointed in him. He needed someone to listen to him, to support him. So you decided to play therapist. How noble of you. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like, Marla. Tell me about the dinners at expensive restaurants. Tell me about the intimate text messages. Tell me about the way he hugged you in your office like you were lovers instead of family. Marla's face crumpled, and she started crying again. Real tears this time, tears of shame and regret. I never meant for it to go that far, she whispered. It started innocently. He came to me for advice, and I liked feeling needed. I liked feeling important to someone. You've been so distant lately, so wrapped up in work. and Aaron made me feel like I mattered. So you decided to steal my son. I didn't steal him. I cared about him. I still care about him. You manipulated him. You turned him against me and made him emotionally dependent on you. That's not caring, Marla. That's predatory. He's 20 years old. And you're his stepmother. You're supposed to support his relationship with his father, not undermine it. Marla wiped her eyes and looked at me with something approaching desperation. What do you want from me? I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. We can move somewhere else. Start over. I want you to understand that actions have consequences, I said, leaning forward in my chair. You've spent months destroying my relationship with my son. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. What does that mean? I opened the folder on the coffee table and spread out the documents like a poker player revealing a royal flush. It means Aaron's tuition is no longer being paid. It means his car insurance has been canceled. It means his credit card, which I was paying for, has been closed. It means every financial support system I provided for him is gone. You can't do that to your own son. My son chose his side. Now he gets to live with it. And me? You get to live with it too. Our joint accounts are frozen. Your credit cards are canceled. Your car payment, which comes out of our joint checking account, will bounce next week. Your HR department is investigating you for inappropriate conduct, and I'm guessing your coworkers are already starting to gossip. Marla stared at me in horror. Leon, you can't destroy my life because you're angry. I'm not destroying your life, Marla. I'm just removing myself from it. You and Aaron can support each other now, emotionally and financially. I don't make enough money to support both of us. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to play house with my son. Marla stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger. You're being cruel. This isn't like you. You're right, I said calmly. The old Leon would have tried to fix this. He would have gone to counseling and worked on the marriage and pretended everything was fine. But the old Leon was a sucker. He trusted people who didn't deserve it and got walked on for his trouble. So what? You're just going to throw away 8 years of marriage? You threw it away when you started playing mommy girlfriend with my son. I'm just cleaning up the mess. That night, Marla packed a bag and went to stay with her friend Gina, a gossipy woman who worked at the same insurance company and loved drama more than oxygen. I knew Gina would get the whole story out of Marla within hours, and that the story would be all over their office by morning, which was exactly what I wanted. Casey came downstairs as I was loading Marla's boxes into the garage, her face a mask of confusion and hurt. Dad, what's happening? Mom said you guys are having problems, but she wouldn't tell me what kind of problems. I sat down on the couch and patted the cushion next to me. Casey curled up beside me like she used to when she was little, and I put my arm around her shoulders. Your mother and Aaron have been having an inappropriate relationship, I said carefully. Nothing physical, but emotionally intimate in a way that crossed boundaries. I found out about it and confronted them, and now there are consequences. What kind of consequences? Aaron is no longer financially supported by me. Your mother is facing an investigation at work, and I'm filing for divorce. Casey was quiet for a long time, processing this information with the analytical mind she'd inherited from me. Is that why Aaron hasn't been coming around for family dinners? She asked finally. You noticed that? I noticed Mom was acting weird around him, like she'd get all giggly and stupid when he texted her, and she'd always find excuses to be alone with him when he came over. Why didn't you say anything? Casey shrugged. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but it felt gross, like she had a crush on him or something. I'm sorry you had to see that. Are you okay, Dad? I looked down at my daughter, this smart, perceptive kid who'd been watching her family fall apart and trying to make sense of it, and felt a surge of protective fury. I will be, I said. We both will be. The next morning, I got a call from Aaron. He'd apparently figured out how to unblock my number, or maybe he was calling from a friend's phone. Dad, we need to talk, he said without preamble. Do we? Look, I know you're pissed about the Marla thing, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. We're friends. She listens to me and gives me advice. There's nothing weird about it. Friends don't have secret romantic dinners, Aaron. They weren't romantic. We were just talking. About how much you hate me and how much better she understands you than your own father does. Silence. Aaron, let me explain something to you, I continued. Marla is my wife. She took vows to support our marriage and our family. Instead, she's been undermining my relationship with you for months, turning you against me and making you emotionally dependent on her. That's not friendship. That's manipulation. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're 20 years old, you're struggling in school, you're insecure about girls, and an older woman made you feel special. It's textbook. It's not like that. Then explain to me why you've been lying to me for months. Explain why you've been sneaking around behind my back. Explain why you told her things about me that you've never had the balls to say to my face. Another silence. I didn't mean for it to happen, Aaron said finally, his voice small. But it did happen, and now you get to live with the consequences. Dad, I can't afford school without your help, and my car insurance. Should have thought of that before you decided to play house with my wife. She's not your wife anymore, is she? The question hit me like a slap. No, I said. She's not, which means she's available for you to support now. Good luck with that. I hung up and blocked his number again. That afternoon, Phil stopped by the house with a 6-pack of beer and the latest gossip from Murphy's Tavern. Heard through the grapevine that Marla's been telling people you're having a midlife crisis, he said, settling into the chair Marla used to occupy. Says you're being paranoid and controlling, and she's the victim of your jealousy. Is that right? Yep. Gina's been spreading it around town like butter on toast. According to her, you've lost your mind and are trying to destroy Marla's life because you can't handle her having male friends. I took a long drink of beer and considered this information. Interesting spin on the story. That's what I thought. So I did a little digging of my own. Turns out Derek Foster, Marla's boss, has been bragging at the country club about how his admin assistant has been having family drama. Real soap opera stuff, he says. Stepmother and stepson getting a little too cozy, if you know what I mean. Derek knows? Derek knows everything. He's the one who reported it to HR, actually. Seems he was getting tired of Aaron hanging around the office after hours, and he was worried about liability issues. I felt a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. So Marla's boss threw her under the bus. Like a city transit system. And here's the kicker. Derek's been telling people that he always thought there was something off about Marla's relationship with your boy. Says he tried to discourage it, but she wouldn't listen. Covering his own ass. Like a smart businessman, can't have harassment lawsuits floating around, even if it's not technically harassment. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking beer and watching the sun set through the living room window. So what's your next move? Phil asked eventually. I'm thinking it's time for a more public conversation about boundaries and consequences. Sounds like you might need backup for that conversation. I might. Phil grinned, and I was reminded why we'd been friends for 30 years. The beauty of living in a mid-sized city is that everyone knows everyone else's business, and gossip travels faster than a speeding bullet. What I needed was to control the narrative, to make sure people understood exactly what had happened and who was responsible. Gina had been spreading Marla's version of events for a week, painting me as a jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife having friends. But Gina had one fatal flaw. She couldn't keep her mouth shut, even when it would be in her best interest to do so. I started my campaign at Murphy's Tavern on a Friday night, when the place was packed with people from all over town. Blue-collar workers, office types, even some of the country club crowd slumming it for authentic atmosphere. Perfect audience for what I had in mind. Phil and I arrived early and claimed a table near the bar where we'd be visible to everyone who walked in. I'd brought my laptop and a portable projector, the kind I used for work presentations. Nothing fancy, just a simple setup that would get the job done. Around 9 o'clock, when the crowd was at its thickest and the alcohol was flowing freely, I stood up and tapped my beer bottle with a fork. "Excuse me, everyone," I called out. "I'd like to make a toast." The bar gradually quieted down, conversations trailing off as people turned to look at me. I recognized faces from around town, Marla's co-workers, Aaron's friends from high school, neighbors, acquaintances from Casey's school events. "I want to toast my wife, Marla," I said, raising my beer bottle. "Or rather, my soon-to-be ex-wife. Some of you may have heard that we're having marital problems. Some of you may have heard that I'm a jealous, controlling husband who can't handle his wife having male friends." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Gina, who was sitting at a table near the back with some of Marla's other co-workers, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "I'm here tonight to set the record straight," I continued, "because I believe in transparency. I believe people should know the truth about the people they work with, socialize with, and trust with their families." I nodded to Phil, who plugged my laptop into the projector and aimed it at the blank wall behind the bar. The first image that appeared was a screenshot of Aaron's text messages to Marla. "This is a conversation between my wife and my 20-year-old son," I said, reading from the screen. Aaron says, "I feel closer to you than anyone else in my life. You understand me in a way my dad never could." Marla responds, "You're so mature for your age. I wish your father could see what I see in you." The bar was silent now. I clicked to the next screenshot. Here's another one. Aaron says, "Can't wait for our dinner tonight. I've been thinking about our conversation all week." Marla responds, "Our little secret. Your dad wouldn't understand how special you are." I clicked through several more messages, each one more damning than the last. The audience was riveted, horrified, and fascinated all at once. Now, some of you might be thinking, "Leon, maybe they were just having innocent family conversations." So, let me show you this. I clicked to a photo of credit card statements, highlighting the charges for expensive dinners, hotel bar receipts, and lingerie purchases. "These are charges on our joint credit card," I said. "Romantic dinners for two at restaurants I've never been to. Hotel bars where my wife was apparently conducting business meetings. Victoria's Secret purchases that I certainly never benefited from." A woman near the front gasped audibly. Someone else muttered, "Holy shit." "And finally," I said, clicking to the last image, "this is security footage from my wife's office, showing my son visiting her after hours for intimate conversations and inappropriate physical contact." The image was grainy, but clear enough to show Aaron and Marla in their extended embrace, her hand on his chest, his face buried in her hair. "So yes," I concluded, "I am divorcing my wife. Not because I'm jealous or controlling, but because she spent months manipulating my son and destroying my family. I thought you all should know the truth before you hear any more creative interpretations of events." I unplugged the laptop and sat down to thunderous silence. Then, slowly, people started talking again, but the conversations were different now. Hushed, shocked, focused entirely on what they'd just seen. Gina looked like she was going to be sick. She gathered her purse and coat and headed for the door, followed by two of Marla's other co-workers, who suddenly seemed very interested in avoiding eye contact with anyone. Phil leaned over and clinked his beer bottle against mine. "Well," he said quietly, "that was brutal. It was necessary. Think it'll get back to Marla?" I looked around the bar, where people were already pulling out their phones to text and call their friends with the gossip of the century. "I'd say she'll know about it within the hour." I was right. My phone started buzzing with calls and texts before we'd even finished our beers. Marla, Aaron, even Casey wanting to know what was happening and why her friend's parents were suddenly calling with questions about our family drama. I ignored most of them, but I did answer Casey's call. "Dad, what did you do?" she asked, her voice tight with anxiety. I told the truth. "Everyone's talking about it. Mom's friend Jennifer just called and said you showed pictures and text messages at Murphy's. Is that true?" "Yes." "Dad, Casey, I know this is hard for you, but your mother and Aaron made choices that hurt our family, and now everyone gets to live with the consequences of those choices, including the consequence of people knowing what really happened. But Mom's going to be humiliated, and Aaron should have thought of that before they decided to play house behind my back." There was a long pause. Then Casey said, "I'm staying at Jennifer's tonight. I can't deal with this right now." "I understand. I love you. I love you too, Dad, but I think you went too far." Maybe I had, but I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to find Aaron's car parked in my driveway. Not just parked, abandoned. The windows were rolled down, the doors were unlocked, and there was a note on the windshield that said, "Can't afford insurance or gas. Thanks a lot, Dad." I walked around the car, examining it with the same attention to detail I'd use for a damaged shipment. It was a 2018 Honda Civic that I'd helped him buy 2 years earlier, reliable and practical. The kind of car a responsible parent buys for their college-age kid. The kind of car that would make an excellent statement piece. I called Phil, who arrived 20 minutes later with his pickup truck and a set of jumper cables. "What's the plan?" he asked, looking at Aaron's abandoned Honda. "Remember that quicklime we used to clear the algae out of your pond last summer?" "Yeah." "I need about 50 pounds of it, and some bags of manure, the really stinky kind." Phil grinned. I like where this is going. We spent the morning turning Aaron's car into a mobile disaster. Quicklime mixed with water in the floorboards, creating a caustic paste that would eat through anything organic. Bags of fresh manure emptied into the air conditioning vents. Raw chicken parts stuffed under the seats. By the time we were finished, the car looked normal from the outside but smelled like a rendering plant. Then I had it towed to the University of Toledo campus, right in front of Aaron's dorm, with a sign in the windshield that read, "Free car, belongs to Leon Briggs, room 237. Ask him about his stepmother." I posted pictures of the whole thing on Facebook, along with a detailed explanation of why Aaron's car was now a biohazard. The post went viral within hours. By Sunday evening, I was getting calls from people I hadn't talked to in years, all wanting to hear the story firsthand. My phone was buzzing constantly with friend requests, comments, and messages from people who'd seen the post shared by their friends. Marla, meanwhile, had apparently gone into hiding. Gina wasn't answering her phone, and according to Phil's sources, Marla hadn't been seen at her apartment since Friday night. Aaron, on the other hand, had become something of a campus celebrity, not the good kind. According to Casey, who'd heard it from her friends who had older siblings at UT, Aaron was being called MILF Hunter and Stepmommy's boy everywhere he went. His fraternity had apparently asked him to take a leave of absence until the scandal faded down. His girlfriend had broken up with him via text message. His roommate had requested a transfer to a different room. "You've destroyed him," Casey said when she finally came home Sunday night. "Aaron called me crying. He can't show his face on campus. He can't afford to stay in school, and everyone thinks he's some kind of pervert." "Aaron destroyed himself," I replied calmly. "I just made sure people knew about it." "And Mom? She's not even answering her phone. Gina says she's having some kind of breakdown. Marla made her choices, now she gets to live with them." Casey stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You're different, Dad. You're scary." "I'm the same person I've always been. I just stopped being a pushover." "This isn't you stopping being a pushover. This is you being cruel." Sometimes cruelty is just honesty without the sugar coating. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the bedroom window, I saw Derek Foster's BMW parked behind my truck. Derek got out of the driver's seat, and Marla climbed out of the passenger side. They were coming to my house, together. I smiled and went downstairs to greet them. Derek Foster looked exactly like what he was, a middle-aged man trying too hard to look younger than his years. Expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, and the kind of confident swagger that comes from never having been punched in the face. Marla looked like hell. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. She stayed behind Derek as they approached my front door like she was using him as a human shield. I opened the door before they could knock. "Derek," I said pleasantly. "Marla, what brings you by on this lovely Sunday evening?" "We need to talk," Derek said, puffing out his chest like a rooster. "About this harassment campaign you've been conducting." "Harassment campaign? I think you're confused. I've been conducting a truth-telling campaign. You've humiliated my employee and created a hostile work environment. I could sue you for defamation." I laughed, which clearly wasn't the reaction Derek had been expecting. "Defamation requires false statements, Derek. Everything I've shared has been completely accurate. Would you like to see the documentation?" "Let us in, Leon," Marla said, speaking for the first time. "Please, we need to figure out how to fix this." "There's nothing to fix. You broke it, you own it." "People are calling me at work," Derek continued. "Clients are asking questions. The insurance commission is talking about an investigation into workplace conduct. This is affecting my business." "Sounds like a you problem." Derek's face was turning red. "You can't destroy people's lives because you're having marital problems." "I'm not destroying anyone's life. I'm just removing myself from the equation. Marla and Aaron can support each other now, emotionally and financially. Isn't that what they wanted?" "Aaron is just a kid," Marla said desperately. "He made a mistake. He doesn't deserve to have his life ruined over this." "Aaron is 20 years old enough to vote, old enough to serve in the military, old enough to make adult decisions, and old enough to face adult consequences. You're his father." "I was his father, right up until he decided you were more important than our relationship." Derek stepped forward, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. "Look, Leon, I get that you're upset, but this has gone far enough. You need to stop the social media posts, stop spreading rumors, and start acting like a mature adult. Or what? Or I'll make sure you regret it." I felt something cold and dangerous settle in my chest. "Are you threatening me, Derek?" "I'm giving you advice. As someone who has connections in this town. Connections you don't have." "Interesting. Tell me, do your connections know about the expense account fraud you've been running through your company? The fake client dinners? The inflated travel receipts? The kickbacks from preferred vendors?" Derek's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. I've been doing some research into your business practices. Amazing what you can find in public records if you know where to look, and I know exactly where to look." I pulled out my phone and showed Derek a screenshot of his company's expense reports, cross-referenced with vendor payments and client billing records. "Logistics, Derek. It's all about tracking things from point A to point B. Money, goods, information. I'm very good at tracking things." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Would you like me to send this information to the State Insurance Commission? I'm sure they'd be very interested in how you've been padding your expense account with fictional client meetings." Derek stared at the phone screen, his face cycling through several shades of red and white. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want you to get off my property. I want you to stop threatening me. And I want you to understand that if you try to retaliate against me in any way, I will destroy your career so thoroughly that you'll be lucky to get a job selling insurance out of a strip mall." Derek looked like he wanted to argue, but Marla grabbed his arm. "Let's go," she said quietly. "This isn't working." They turned to leave, But Marla stopped at the end of the driveway and looked back at me. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she said. "I know you don't believe me, but I never meant to hurt you or Aaron. But you did hurt us, and now you get to live with that. What about Casey? She's caught in the middle of this, and she doesn't deserve it. Casey will be fine. She's smart enough to understand the difference between being a victim and being a casualty of someone else's poor choices." Marla started crying again, but they were the same selfish tears she'd been crying all week. Tears for herself, for her situation, for the consequences she was facing, not tears of genuine remorse. "I'm not the villain here, Leon." "No," I agreed. "You're not the villain. You're just weak and selfish and willing to destroy other people's lives to make yourself feel better. That's not evil, Marla. That's just pathetic." They left, and I went back inside to find Casey standing at the top of the stairs, having heard the entire conversation. "Dad," she said quietly, "are you going to be okay?" "I'm going to be fine. Better than fine." "And Aaron?" "Aaron made his choice. Now he gets to live with it. What if he wants to apologize? What if he wants to fix things?" I looked up at my daughter, this smart, perceptive kid, who was trying to hold her family together even as it fell apart around her. Then he can start by taking responsibility for his actions instead of hiding behind other people. He can start by admitting what he did was wrong instead of making excuses. And he can start by understanding that some things can't be fixed, only lived with. Do you still love him? The question hit me like a physical blow. Did I still love Aaron? The kid I'd raised, supported, worried about, been proud of? The kid who'd thrown it all away for late-night text messages and secret dinners with his stepmother? "I love who he used to be," I said finally. "I don't know who he is now." Casey nodded like that made sense to her, and went back to her room. The next morning, I woke up to find my front yard covered in toilet paper and my mailbox knocked over. Teenage vandalism, probably friends of Aaron's from high school trying to show solidarity. I cleaned it up before going to work, making a mental note to install better security lighting. At the office, my co-workers treated me like a minor celebrity. Everyone had heard about the Murphy's Tavern incident, and most of them seemed to approve of my handling of the situation. My boss, a no-nonsense woman named Sandra, called me into her office around lunchtime. "Leon," she said, closing the door behind me, "I need to ask you about this situation with your wife and son." "What about it? Is it going to affect your work? Are there going to be legal issues, harassment claims, anything I need to worry about?" "No legal issues, no harassment, just a divorce proceeding and some family drama that's already been resolved." "Good, because I'll be honest with you, what I've heard makes me respect you more, not less. Too many men would have just rolled over and taken it. You stood up for yourself." "I did what needed to be done." "That's exactly what I'm talking about. You handled it like a professional, clean, efficient, no unnecessary drama." I spent the rest of the day feeling better than I had in months. My work was getting done, my personal life was under control, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in charge of my own destiny. That feeling lasted until I got home and found Aaron sitting on my front porch. He looked terrible. Unshaven, unwashed, wearing the same clothes he'd had on in the security footage from Marla's office. He stood up when he saw me but didn't approach. "Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "can we talk?" "I don't think we have anything to talk about." "Please, just 5 minutes." I unlocked the front door and gestured for him to follow me inside. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd confronted Marla a week earlier, and looked at each other across a gulf that felt unbridgeable. "I messed up," Aaron said finally. "I know I messed up, and I know you're angry, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But Dad, I can't do this anymore. I can't afford school, I can't afford to live, and everyone on campus thinks I'm some kind of freak." "You are some kind of freak. You had an emotional affair with your stepmother. It wasn't an affair. Then what was it? Aaron was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet I had to strain to hear him. I was lonely and confused, and you were always so busy, and when I tried to talk to you about stuff, you'd just give me advice about being responsible and working harder. Marla listened to me. She made me feel like what I was going through mattered. So you decided to replace me with her. I didn't mean to. It just happened gradually. She'd text me to check how I was doing and we'd end up talking for hours. She'd invite me to dinner to discuss my problems, and it felt good to have someone care about me that much. I cared about you. You cared about my grades and my job prospects and whether I was making good decisions. Marla cared about my feelings. I felt a flash of anger so hot, it surprised me. Marla cared about having a 20-year-old boy tell her she was wonderful and understanding and better than his father. She used your insecurity to make herself feel important. Maybe. But it felt real to me. That's what makes it manipulation, Aaron. It felt real because she wanted it to feel real. She needed you to be emotionally dependent on her so she could feel needed and desired and special. You were her midlife crisis, not her stepson. Aaron started crying then, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. I know that now. I can see it now. But at the time, it felt like she was the only person who understood me. And now? Now I've lost everything. My school, my friends, my girlfriend, my family, I've got nothing left. I looked at my son, my broken, manipulated, stupid son, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but something close to pity. Aaron, I said carefully, do you understand why what you did was wrong? Not just stupid or hurtful, but fundamentally wrong. I think so. Tell me. Because she was your wife, and I was supposed to support your marriage, not undermine it. And because I let her turn me against you instead of talking to you directly about my problems. And because I'm your son, and I should have been loyal to you, not to her. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. I sat back in my chair and studied Aaron's face, looking for signs of genuine understanding versus manipulative desperation. What do you want from me? I asked finally. I want to come home. I want to finish school. I want to fix our relationship. And Marla? I haven't talked to her since Friday night. I don't want to talk to her. I can see now that what we had was wrong, unhealthy. It's going to take time, Aaron. A lot of time. And things are never going to be the same between us. I know. And you're going to have to live with the consequences of your choices. The gossip, the social media posts, the reputation you've earned. I'm not going to try to fix that for you. I understand. I looked at my son for a long moment, weighing my options. I could send him away, let him sink or swim on his own, and probably never see him again. Or I could try to salvage something from the wreckage of our relationship. You can come home, I said finally. But there are conditions. Anything. You cut off all contact with Marla. No texts, no calls, no meetings, nothing. If she tries to contact you, you tell me immediately. Okay. You get a job, part-time, full-time, whatever you can find. You start paying your own expenses and contributing to the household. Okay. You go to counseling, real counseling, with a professional, to work through whatever issues made you think having an emotional affair with your stepmother was acceptable. Okay. And you understand that this is your last chance. If you mess up again, if you lie to me again, if you betray my trust in any way, you're done. Permanently. Aaron nodded, tears still streaming down his face. Thank you, Dad. I won't let you down again. We'll see. That night, as Aaron settled back into his old room and Casey cautiously welcomed him home, I sat in my office and thought about forgiveness and consequences and the difference between justice and revenge. I'd gotten my revenge on Marla. Her reputation was destroyed, Her job was in jeopardy, and her support system had evaporated. She was facing the consequences of her choices in the most public and humiliating way possible. But Aaron was my son, and despite everything he'd done, despite the betrayal and the lies and the manipulation, he was still my son. Maybe that meant something, maybe it didn't. Time would tell. The calm lasted exactly 3 days. On Thursday evening, as I was helping Casey with her calculus homework, and Aaron was washing dishes as part of his new household responsibilities, someone started pounding on our front door. Not knocking, pounding, like they were trying to break it down. I looked through the peephole and saw Marla standing on my porch, her hair wild and her face flushed with anger. Behind her stood Derek Foster, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Open the door, Leon," Marla shouted. "I know Aaron's in there. I need to talk to him." "Dad?" Aaron appeared in the hallway, his face pale with fear. "Go upstairs," I said quietly. "Take Casey with you. Lock the door, and don't come out until I tell you." The pounding continued, accompanied by Marla's increasingly hysterical demands. "Aaron, Aaron, I know you can hear me. Please, just talk to me for 5 minutes." I pulled out my phone and called Phil. "I need backup," I said when he answered. "Marla and her boss are at my house, and they're not taking no for an answer." "On my way." I also called 911, reporting a disturbance and potential trespassing. Then I opened the door, keeping the security chain engaged so it would only open a few inches. "Marla," I said calmly. "Derek, you need to leave my property." "I need to see Aaron," Marla said, her voice cracking with desperation. "I need to explain things to him. I need him to understand that I never meant to hurt anyone." "Aaron doesn't want to see you. He's asked me to tell you that he wants no contact." "That's not true. You're poisoning him against me." "I don't need to poison him against you, Marla. You did that yourself." Derek stepped forward, trying to look authoritative. "Leon, this has gone on long enough. Marla is having a breakdown. She's lost her job, her reputation is destroyed, and she's barely holding it together. You've made your point. Now, it's time to be the bigger person." Marla lost her job? The insurance commission opened an investigation based on the complaints they received. The company had to let her go to avoid liability issues. I felt a surge of satisfaction that I tried to keep off my face. "That's unfortunate, but it's not my problem." "It is your problem," Marla screamed. "You destroyed my life. You destroyed Aaron's life, all because you couldn't handle the fact that your son and I had a connection." "I destroyed your life? Let me think about that." I pretended to consider her words seriously. "Did I force you to have secret dinners with my son? Did I force you to send him inappropriate text messages? Did I force you to manipulate him into an emotional affair? It wasn't an affair. Did I force you to lie to me for months about where you were and who you were with? You don't understand. Did I force you to turn my son against me and undermine my marriage?" Marla was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "I loved him. I still love him. Not romantically, but like a mother, like someone who cares about his future." "You loved the way he made you feel. You loved having a young man worship you and tell you how wonderful you were. You loved feeling desired and needed and special. Aaron was never anything more to you than a source of validation." "That's not true." "Then why are you here, Marla? If you really cared about Aaron's well-being, you'd leave him alone to heal and rebuild his life. But you can't do that, because you need him to tell you that what you did was okay. You need him to make you feel better about destroying our family." Derek grabbed Marla's arm, trying to pull her away from the door. "Come on, Marla. This isn't working. Let's go." But Marla wrenched free and threw herself against the door, trying to break the security chain. "Aaron, Aaron, please, just talk to me. Tell your father that I never hurt you." The chain held, but barely. I could see neighbors starting to come out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Patterson from across the street was standing on her porch with her phone out, probably recording everything. Perfect. "Marla," I said, raising my voice so the neighbors could hear. "You need to leave. You're trespassing, and I've called the police." "I don't care about the police. I care about Aaron. He's like a son to me." "He is my son. And you forfeited any claim to a relationship with him when you decided to manipulate him into an emotional affair." "It wasn't an affair," she screamed again, but her voice was getting hoarse and desperate. Phil's pickup truck pulled into my driveway, followed by a police cruiser. 2 officers got out of the patrol car, hands resting casually on their duty belts as they assessed the situation. "Evening, folks," the older officer said. "We got a call about a disturbance." "These people are trespassing on my property," I said, opening the door wider now that backup had arrived. "I've asked them to leave multiple times, but they refuse." "Ma'am," the younger officer said to Marla, "I'm going to need you to step away from the door." "They're keeping me from my son," Marla said, turning to the officers with wild eyes. "He's in there and they won't let me see him." "Is this your house, ma'am?" "No, but—" "Then you need to leave the property, now." Derek finally showed some backbone, grabbing Marla's arm more firmly and starting to drag her toward his BMW. "Come on, Marla, we're going." But Marla wasn't done. As Derek pulled her across the yard, she started screaming at the top of her lungs, loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "Leon Briggs is a controlling, abusive husband. He's keeping my son away from me. Aaron needs me. I'm the only one who understands him. I'm the only one who loves him the right way." The officers exchanged glances. Mrs. Patterson was definitely recording now, and I could see other neighbors pulling out their phones as well. "Ma'am," the older officer said, "you need to calm down." "I won't calm down. Not until I see Aaron, not until I can explain to him that what we had was beautiful and pure, and his father is trying to destroy it." And there it was. In front of 2 police officers, half a dozen neighbors, and multiple recording devices, Marla had just confessed to having an inappropriate relationship with my son and described it as beautiful and pure. I couldn't have scripted it better myself. Derek managed to get Marla into his car, but she rolled down the window and continued screaming as they drove away. "I love you, Aaron. Don't let your father poison you against me. What we had was real." The officers took my statement, got the names of witnesses, and assured me that they'd file a report about the trespassing and disturbing the peace. The neighbors gradually went back inside, but not before several of them stopped to tell me how sorry they were that I was dealing with such a difficult situation. Phil helped me check the security of the house, making sure all the doors and windows were locked, and the alarm system was armed. "Well," he said as we finished our patrol, "that was insane. That was exactly what I needed." "How do you figure?" "Because now everyone knows, beyond any doubt, what really happened. Marla just confessed in front of witnesses to having an inappropriate relationship with Aaron and described it as beautiful and pure. There's no way to spin that as innocent family bonding." "And Derek?" "Derek's done. He brought a mentally unstable woman to my house to harass my family. His professional reputation is shot." Phil grinned. "You're a cold bastard, Leon." "I'm a thorough bastard. There's a difference." Upstairs, I found Aaron and Casey huddled in Casey's room, both of them pale and shaken. "Is she gone?" Aaron asked. "She's gone, and she's not coming back." "Dad," Casey said quietly. "She sounded really crazy, like scary crazy. Marla's having a hard time accepting the consequences of her actions, but that's not our problem anymore." "What if she comes back?" "She won't. The police have a report now, and if she tries to contact us again, she'll be arrested for harassment." Aaron was staring at the floor, his hands clenched into fists. "She said she loved me. She said what we had was beautiful." "What do you think about that?" I think she's sick. What she did to me, what she did to our family, there was nothing beautiful about it. It was selfish and wrong and destructive. Good. Hold on to that understanding. The next morning, I woke up to find my phone buzzing with notifications. The videos of Marla's breakdown had gone viral on social media, shared and reshared by people who couldn't believe what they were seeing. The comments were brutal. This woman is clearly mentally unstable. Feel sorry for that poor kid, having a stepmother who's obsessed with him. The husband handled this perfectly. Calm, professional, didn't engage with her crazy. Someone needs to get this woman some serious help. By lunchtime, the story had been picked up by local news outlets. By evening, it was trending on Twitter under the hashtag #CrazyStepmother. Derek Foster's insurance company issued a statement distancing themselves from their former employee and her personal issues. Derek himself was reportedly taking a leave of absence to deal with family matters. Aaron's university, which had been considering disciplinary action based on the original gossip, quietly dropped their investigation. Hard to punish a kid for being the victim of an inappropriate relationship with an older woman. Marla, according to Gina, who was now desperately trying to distance herself from her former friend, had been admitted to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. It was over. Completely, thoroughly, definitively over. That evening, as I sat in my living room with Aaron and Casey, watching a mindless sitcom and eating pizza like a normal family, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Aaron had learned his lesson the hard way, but he'd learned it. Casey had seen what happened when people made selfish choices and hurt the people they were supposed to love. And I had proven to myself that I didn't have to be a victim of other people's bad decisions. "Dad?" Casey said during a commercial break. "Yeah? Are you happy now?" I considered the question seriously. Was I happy? My marriage was over, my relationship with my son was damaged, and I'd spent weeks engaged in psychological warfare with people I used to care about. But I was free. Free from Marla's lies and manipulation. Free from Aaron's betrayal and disrespect. Free from being taken advantage of by people who thought I was too weak or too nice to fight back. "I'm satisfied," I said finally. "Sometimes that's better than happy." Aaron looked up from his slice of pizza. "Dad, I know I said this before, but I really am sorry. For everything. For hurting you. For betraying your trust. For letting Marla manipulate me into thinking you were the problem. I know you are. Do you think we'll ever be okay? Like, really okay?" I looked at my son, this young man who'd made terrible choices and paid a terrible price for them, and saw something I hadn't seen in months. Humility, genuine remorse, a real understanding of what he'd done wrong. "I think we'll be different," I said. "But different doesn't have to mean worse." 3 months later, I ran into Derek Foster at the grocery store. He looked like he'd aged 10 years, his hair grayer and his face lined with stress. When he saw me, he actually tried to hide behind a display of breakfast cereal. "Derek," I said pleasantly, pushing my cart over to where he was cowering. "How are you doing?" "Leon." He straightened up, trying to regain some dignity. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." "Good to hear. How's the insurance business?" His face flushed. "I'm exploring new opportunities." "Ah, well, I'm sure something will turn up." I started to push my cart away, then stopped and looked back at him. "Derek, can I give you some advice?" "I suppose." "Next time you decide to threaten someone, make sure you're not more vulnerable than they are. It's just good business sense." I left him standing there, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor, and finished my shopping with a smile on my face. Sometimes you have to burn the bridge, just to see who'll swim after you. Here's hoping they drown.